if you think ontologically, all there is material that is moving around, I want you to tell me how you think that belief is coherent with the belief in things like human language, mathematics.
Well, that's not all physicalism is, right? Because you can be a physicalist and think that there are other things besides physical objects, right? Like mental objects, but that those things are nonetheless grounded in physical objects. And it's in virtue of that you're a physicalist.
Well, so you're going to try, at that point, you're almost arguing that mental objects are merely Maya of the physical world. They're an illusion.
No, they're grounded in the physical world.
That doesn't, okay.
What do you mean
elaborate
by
on that? What do you mean that?
Godlyish, this might damage me because, well, more so damage the argument which I present, because I'm saying more of they don't actually exist at all. They're just as real as the flying spaghetti monster or anything of that sort. But unlike the flying spaghetti monster, mathematics is useful.
Well, I was talking about things like mental states, right? We want to say mental states obviously exist. No, nominalism about mathematics is something completely different. Like you could be a physicalist and accept that abstract objects exist, right? They're physicalist Platonists.
You have to accept
physicalism is a thesis about concrete objects.
You have to accept that, though they're very arbitrary, but still useful once again, because if you just mention out of the blue, like, oh, well, there's the abstract concepts, well, how do you know that? How do you even know yada yada? So I'm trying to adjust to what they're saying.
Yeah, so what was the argument against physicalism?
How do you derive meaning from it? What are we supposed to do? How do you derive from just matter?
No, right. He was just saying the mere fact that we can experience abstract objects means that physicalism is false.
Well, you could be a Platonist and experience abstract objects, but I mean, you could be a Platonist and a physicalist, right?
Where can I look?
What's the problem with that?
You know about this?
Sure,
Google.
Any ability to hold abstract objects or basically have a mind at all means that physicalism has to be false, which is false.
Why would we accept that, though, right? There are reductive physicalists who thinks that minds exist, but minds are reducible to physical objects. There are non-reductive physicalists who think that minds exist, but they're not reducible. Right? There's a lot of different physicalist views, and I don't think many of them deny that minds exist, except for like the limit of materialism. Exactly. There's like 3 people that hold that view.
My understanding of physicalism is
exactly my point.
My understanding of physicalism is that they say that everything is physical, that there is nothing over and above the physical. As the guy said in the chat, it says all things that exist are physical, concrete phenomena. Now,
yeah, but they're also physicalists that believe that consciousness is a quality of the physical, so that all physical things experience.
Well, I mean, this is like Daniel Dennett, kind of, right? Like the kind of emergent
no,
consciousness.
Daniel Dennett denies consciousness.
Well, it's kind of like this idea that consciousness is an emergent property of matter, which that doesn't.
That's not the claim.
That's exactly what the claim sounds like to me. So tell me where I'm wrong. I mean,
so
just help me
in order
get
for something to be, in order for something to be emergent, right, you'd have to identify a way in which the things that it emerges from map onto the thing like consciousness. So you could say something like liquidity is an emergent property of H2O molecules, right? But there are van der Waals forces which allow for H2O molecules to slide past each other, which produces the effect of liquidity. Now, there's no way in which the physical states of the mind can be described, or at least you can describe the physical states of the mind in such a manner that you get consciousness. With emergence, usually there's some mechanism which you can identify which leads to emergence.
Okay, well, my argument is not that the brain can produce any of this stuff. Their argument is that from matter, this stuff comes. So if you don't want to call it emergent, I don't care.
So
what word would you rather use? Like, their point is that from physical states arrive mental states, and these are abstract.
So one way you could look at the identity between mental states and physical states is that there doesn't have to be like a conceptual reduction, right? So like if you think of Lois Lane and her concept of Superman and her concept of Clark Kent, those are two distinct concepts. So she's going to have different beliefs about Superman that she does about Clark Kent. And the idea is that that could be the same way we conceive of the identity between, you know, the mind and the brain. So that mental states pick out brain states, just like Superman picks out Clark Kent, but they don't mean the same thing. They're two distinct concepts.
I get that they're two distinct concepts, but you're trying to say that one arises from the physical world because you don't believe anything isn't a physical concrete phenomenon.
Well, they won't have to say it arises, right? Like we wouldn't say Superman arises from Clark Kent. We would just say that they're identical.
Is that just an assumption you go on? Do you have any reason for that belief? Any justification for the claim?
Oh, what's the definition?
Yeah, so there's like the standard causal exclusion argument, right? I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I'm not familiar with it. Fill me in.
So the idea is that our actions are caused by physical events, right? Like they have brain causes or whatever. And we want to say mental states cause our actions, but we don't want to say that there's like overdetermination, right? We don't want to say that if we didn't have the brain state but had the mental state, we'd still do the action. And we don't want to say that if we, you know, didn't have the mental state but had the brain state, we'd still do the action, right? So we're rejecting overdetermination. Physical states cause, or brain states cause actions, and mental states cause actions. And since there's no dual causality, then we have to say that brain states are mental states. Right. Dual causality meaning like, you know, if somebody gets shot and struck by lightning at the same time, that he's caused to die by both things or something, right? But we wouldn't say that about all of our actions, would we?
I don't know, dude. It sounds to me like you're just drawing a distinction between physical state and mental state and want me to accept that because you've drawn that distinction, therefore the physical can produce an immaterial abstract reality. I don't see how you follow. I don't see how any of that. I don't see how you're making the leap.
It's not about producing, right? Like think of Superman and Clark Kent. We don't have to say anything like Clark Kent produces Superman. They're just identical. They're the same thing.
That's clearly not true of mathematical principles or things like Mandelbrot sets, dude.
I mean, I thought we were talking about mental states.
Well, I mean, those things. My point is that you would say those are mental states, and that, but they're invariant over time. But you're saying they rely on matter that is not in the same state. For example,
No,
my
but
brain is not in the my brain is not in the same physical state as yours. When I think of the number two,
it seems like you're talking about what other people are saying.
Yeah, you don't have to say that numbers are mental, right? You could be a physicalist and be a Platonist, or you could have a nominalist view about numbers.
how
Doesn't
can
matter,
you be,
right? Both
how
of
can
those.
you be a physicalist who says all things are physical concrete phenomena and be a Platonist?
Because you can be a physicalist that says that all things which are concrete are physical, right? If numbers aren't concrete objects, then we wouldn't expect them to be physical under physicalism.
Right, numbers have no causal relation. Anything with causal relation is going to be physical.
I mean, it seems like you guys are changing the definition of physicalism on me here. What is define a physical concrete phenomenon?
Yeah, I feel like that's false, actually. Physicalism should hold that all objects are physical in some sense. You can't have Platonic reality and still be a physicalist.
I mean, that's just a semantic dispute. Really.
That's not a semantic
care about
dispute, dude. It's
Yeah, but
not semantic.
it doesn't vindicate your claim, Perichoresis, even if what you're saying is true. Like, I mean, you're positing some kind of dualism, so
No,
right?
I'm not a dualist.
Well, then what are you?
I don't draw a dialectic between the one and the many. I don't believe that the one is ontologically prior to the many or the many ontologically prior to the one. So, for example, I may see a unified Coke bottle that is made of many plastic parts and a label and things of that nature, but it's still one Coke bottle, and it is both many parts at the same time. I don't draw that dialectic.
I really don't know what that means. But okay.
Okay,
One way
well,
to look at
I'm a Christian, right? So we don't draw dialectics between the one and the many. The three persons of the Trinity are just as eternal as the one essence of God.
So one way to look at physicalism is once we have a complete sort of scientific theory of everything, we will have an understanding of the nature of all concrete objects that exist, right? So there are going to be no concrete objects that aren't captured in a scientific theory of everything.
Okay. And you're telling me that mathematical principles and things like Mandelbrot sets are not concrete objects, but you're saying
Yes.
you're a physicalist.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm a physicalist, but
Well, I don't think.
I don't think concrete objects. I don't think mathematical objects existing is a problem for physicalism.
Well, it is if physicalism believes that there are only physical concrete objects, and you don't think mathematical objects are concrete. That would be a problem.
You're just assuming that mathematical objects have like a basis beyond the physical, though. It's just a circular.
No, it's not an assumption, bro.
Yeah,
How is that not?
Because do you know what a Mandelbrot set is?
Yeah, it's like fractals, right?
Yeah, and you can infinitely zoom in on them forever.
So what?
But another question,
So they
right, is
can't fit in your finite gray matter.
It's all conceptual. Who cares? You're just talking about more abstractions.
No, my point is I'm giving you an example of something that exists that is not a physical concrete phenomenon. Therefore, there is an issue with physicalism. I thought we
point to
agreed.
any abstraction you want, right? That's all you're doing is you're saying that we have abstract objects that we hold in our minds, right? It doesn't matter if it's Mandelbrot sets or fucking the
No, I
concept
don't
of a
think you
dog.
hold a Mandelbrot set in your mind. That's
But
why.
you're going from all you're doing is going from abstract. We have abstract objects, therefore physicalism is false. That's your only inference. I don't see any argument other than like some kind of intuition you have about it. You're not actually giving an argument. You're just saying this seems intuitive to me, right? What have you given in defense of that position?
A Mandelbrot set is an example of something that exists, not in your mind, something that really exists because they were discovered. It's not something that exists in your mind. It's something that exists in this reality that cannot possibly fit in your finite gray matter because it's
talking about. Where do Mandelbrot sets exist in reality?
You're asking for a physicalist definition of something I'm telling you is non-physical.
Okay, so again, you're just referring to anything abstract. It doesn't matter if it's Mandelbrot sets or the concept of a dog. So I don't know why you think Mandelbrot sets is somehow more important than any other abstraction you could think of. So let's just go back to the fact that we have abstractions. Yes, we all experience abstractions. What are we inferring from that is my question. And why do you think that your inference is better than the physicalist inference? Why is yours... I don't know. Why is yours more true?
I'm saying it's incoherent with the physicalist presupposition.
But it's not, right? Because part of the definition of physicalism is that you can have mental states that supervene on physical states. And that's consistent with the physicalist position. It doesn't say that mental states cannot exist. That is not part of...
The number 2 is not a mental state. That's my point.
It is contained and dependent on mental states, unless you want to say that numbers are real and exist objectively.
Yes, I'm a mathematical realist. Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Well, then that kind of changes things. You're going to need like a serious argument for that. But I mean,
here, I'll just send you a whole paper on that thing, man. How about that? And we'll talk about it later. I'm going to go play some games. But here you go, man.
Wait, who was saying something about mathematical realism?
Perichoresis.
Yeah, there you go.
No, the other person, like who was arguing that it
I'll
was
just
false.
I wasn't saying it was false. I was just saying he would have to be.
here. I'll just post it in the chat. There you guys go. It's in the main chat if you guys want to.
Numbers prove God.
I was just saying he's making the leap from abstract objects to like non-physicalism, but now he's saying that numbers are real, which just makes it more complicated.
What
Like,
else is
why are we ignoring the view that God laid out is that all
love you
concrete
guys.
objects,
Deuces.
all concrete objects are grounded in the physical? Why are we ignoring that argument? I don't understand how it's relevant to point out that there are abstract objects that are not concrete objects if the physicalist is saying that all concrete objects are grounded in the physical.
All abstract objects are grounded in the physical.
No, all concrete objects are grounded in the physical.
Isn't that like?
Yeah, they're all concrete objects are either physical or grounded in physical.
I have a question.
What's up?
Can a concept? Let's just take anything.
You
I don't
not have
know.
a
Mickey
nose?
Mouse. Okay, let's just take Mickey Mouse. If every person in existence of the universe dies who recognizes or at least knows Mickey Mouse, does the concept of Mickey Mouse dies with it?
What?
Yeah. I think Godlyish said it before. Like, you can be anomalous about these concepts and say that every time someone has a mind and conceives of these abstract objects, the simple fact that they don't change or they seem like invariant doesn't mean that they exist. Generally speaking, like, you can be anomalous about these things. Why does Mickey Mouse have to exist beyond our experience of Mickey Mouse in that moment, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how we agree on that. I don't know how everybody is. I would like something that is reliable.
Yeah, I just think it all comes down to mind. It's just a philosophy of mind discussion. That's all it's about. I mean, all abstractions take place within mind. So what's the relation between minds and the physical? That's all you have to worry about, unless you're like a realist about mathematical objects, which is what apparently perichoresis is, which is why it made it more complicated.